Gang, I'm excited to talk to you about this indie niche house from the UK today. Neshama, are you familiar with this house? They've got 3 fragrances that I'm going to talk to you about today. One of them is an Art and Olfaction 2023 finalist. The last fragrance I'm going to talk to you about today. We're doing this in alphabetical order. So find out about a brand new indie niche house from the UK coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's Sebastian. We're talking about Neshama today. I met the owner of the brand, Simon Shaer, earlier this year at Extrait. He was at the show, and I think he had reached out to me, and I have a hard time following up with everybody on Instagram. In fact, I don't have time to check my messages, so if you're ever sending me a message and you don't hear back, I just can't keep up. But anyway, I met him there. He said he had reached out to me, and I got the samples. A couple months later, I met him again at the Art and Olfaction Awards in Los Angeles, where he was nominated for one of the fragrances, Souls on Fire, this one right here. Don't you just love this bottle? I absolutely love these bottles. They look kind of vintage to me. Classic, maybe a bit Art Deco. It's kind of one of the reasons why I like these fragrances, and also because they're a bit on the vintage side. I enjoy my classic fragrances. If it wasn't for the classic fragrances, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. So I've got 3 fragrances, Jasmine and Tobacco. That's the first one I'm going to talk to you about today. The second one is called Ninth Wave, this one right here. And then finally, Souls on Fire, which is the fragrance that was nominated for the Art and Olfaction. It was a finalist for the Art and Olfaction 2023. So these fragrances are Extrait de Parfum, 20% concentration. Again, the perfumer, indie perfumer, is Simon Shaer. Let's go ahead and get started with the first fragrance, Jasmine and Tobacco. I like the idea of jasmine and tobacco. I would classify this, even though it has loads of jasmine, a woody floral, more woody than floral, but definitely I think it's a woody floral fragrance. There's loads of Egyptian jasmine in this, Tobacco Absolute, New Caledonian Sandalwood, Virginian Cedarwood, Bois De Landes, Bergamot, Lemon, Rosemary, Labdanum, and Benzoin. So what the heck is Bois De Landes? I had to look it up because I'd never seen this note in a fragrance, but it is written on the back of the box for these Neshama fragrances. And here's the box from the front. I like the design, and as I said, I love these bottles. They really look like they came out of the 1920s or something, when Art Deco was pretty big, 20s, 30s, wherever that era is. But Bois De Landes is... it says it's this specialty blend of natural isolates from ROBERTET is a sophisticated accord that captures the raw essence of earth, moss, wood, damp forest, and that deep, rich green that you would smell on the ground of dense woodlands. This is taken from Perfumers Apprentice, who is actually quite local to San Francisco, and they sell ingredients and notes for fragrances, and they wrote that little quote about that ingredient that is in Jasmine and Tobacco, and it seems like Neshama does use quite a bit of ROBERTET raw materials. So what do I get with Jasmine and Tobacco? For me, it's definitely got a lot of spice. Seems like there's more spice that's in here that I'm getting from this fragrance than what's credited. In fact, there's not a lot of spicy notes mentioned here. They do mention rosemary, but the Tobacco Absolute and the Egyptian jasmine, along with everything else that's in here, perhaps it's the Bois De Landes, is giving me a holiday spice vibe. For sure it is, but it's intense with the woods. There's definitely the Tobacco Absolute experience. You get a little bit of smoke. You get a little bit of the leaf of the tobacco, but lots of woods and white flowers. And the white flowers maybe come off a little bit indolic, not too much to me. I'm getting a little bit, which is just the right amount. I actually like this part about the jasmine. Sometimes jasmine can be extremely indolic and overwhelming with the funky smell, but here it's definitely very tolerable. And you've got the ashy smokiness from the tobacco anyway, so whatever funk there is with the jasmine, it's toning it down. So there's loads of woods, the New Caledonian Sandalwood, the Virginian Cedarwood. Perhaps we're getting a little bit of woods from the Bois De Landes as well, but then you've got the aromatic touches of the rosemary. It's giving us a spice for sure. And again, I'm getting holiday spice vibes. I'm almost getting things like nutmeg, cardamom, cinnamon, cloves, kind of like a potpourri of spices in here. At least that's how it wears on me. Instantly hinting at holiday spices, which is kind of fun and also festive at the same time. Eventually, the fragrance dries down to more of an ambery experience with the labdanum and the benzoin resin in here. It's quite a great fragrance. I like this idea of jasmine and tobacco. I experienced this kind of a concept or idea with Amouage's Portrayal Woman. It's another jasmine tobacco fragrance, but here it's totally different. Similar idea with the jasmine and tobacco running the show, but it goes in a completely different direction, which is quite nice. And again, very festive for me because it does remind me of the holidays. So let's go ahead and quickly smell jasmine and tobacco. If you've already sampled the fragrances of Neshama, do put a comment down below so I can find out. So we've got a few sprays here. This is an Extrait de Parfum, 20% concentration, as I said. So for sure, there's a smokiness and an ashiness here. Just if you've ever hung around with a smoker, I grew up with a smoker, my mom smokes. I know the smell, and here it's nice. But what the jasmine does is it does tone it down. Rather than smelling extremely cigarette-y, smoky, it tones it down, and again, it's creating the spice. There's like a cinnamon, clove, nutmeg spice thing happening here that I'm getting with the combination of the notes, and it gives you that kind of very festive, spicy experience, which is quite pleasant here. Really wonderful. This is my second favorite of the three fragrances, jasmine and tobacco. And in the background of the fragrance, you might get very, very light hints of something rosy as well from what I'm checking out right now with my strip here. It does give me light hints of rose in there. Very, very light. And again, once again, I think it's created by all the different notes that are in here. Not only it's giving me the holiday spice vibe, but also some light rosiness. But either way, that is jasmine and tobacco from Neshama. Let me know what you think of the sound of that fragrance, and let me know what you think of the bottles. I'm obsessed with these bottles. I love anything Art Deco. I just love it, and I think those bottles are really, really cool. All right, the next fragrance we're talking about in alphabetical order, it's Ninth Wave. This one right here. I would classify this as a woody fragrance for sure. It's got New Caledonian Sandalwood along with Nagarmotha, which is basically Cypriol. And Nagarmotha Cypriol does have that kind of vetiver-like experience along with like a mixture of other woods and maybe a little bit of patchouli. But it's New Caledonian Sandalwood, Nagarmotha Cypriol, Chinese Oud, Castoreum, Cedrat, Bergamot, Black Pepper, Rose Geranium, Virginia and Atlas Cedarwood, Nutmeg, and Oakmoss. For me, between this fragrance and the last fragrance, Souls on Fire, I felt like this one was a bit underwhelming. But that's just to my experience. I felt like the other two fragrances were more exciting for me, more of the type of fragrances I enjoy, and with this one being an overdose of woods, and I always mention I'm a bit bored of just woody fragrances, and some people find those exciting. I wanted a little more excitement with this particular fragrance, but in the end, there's some excitement that comes in. As I said, it's lots of sandalwood, and it has the Virginia and Atlas Cedarwood that's very, very prominent here, and you do get some, citrusy touches that come through, a little bit of the oud, there's some geranium rose in here, and then of course, I always mention geranium does have a bit of rosiness, so they are kind of bringing out a little bit of the rosiness in this geranium note that's in here, but it's not uber rosy, it's more of the aromatic touches of the minty and rosy qualities of the geranium in here, and then some spices and oak moss comes in as well. Again, this is definitely the third favorite of mine from this collection, but still very, very solid if you are into woody fragrances and you like the idea of cedar and sandalwood together with all these different accents that come in to kind of accentuate the fragrance to create this really interesting woody experience. So let's quickly smell Ninth Wave, and do let me know if you have sampled this fragrance or any of the fragrances from Neshama and what your thoughts are on this house. Let's see. Again, this is a very, very woody experience, but you do have all of the things going in here. There's lots of spices for sure, aromatics for sure, and then the oud that comes in here as well. So they do mention Castoreum. I think there is a little bit of a leathery touch because Castoreum is used to create that leather accord. So in the background, I am getting some leather in here and more of the variety of the Castoreum-like smell of leather rather than a leather accord that's created from various, molecules and things like that. But there's some warm spices in here, earthy elements, does get powdery, aromatic for sure. But again, it's a nice fragrance. It might get a little boring when some people are used to a little more excitement in fragrances, but I know there are fans of just straightforward woody fragrances with some accents coming through, and I think this will appeal to those type of folks. But for me, it's my third favorite of the collection of fragrances from Neshama. So that's ninth wave. This one it is right here. And again, the bottles are really cool, and you can tell from the juices as well. As you can see, Souls on Fire has really golden colored, and then Ninth Wave is a lot lighter. And the fact that the Ninth Wave has that sandalwood, and I feel like sandalwood has that kind of a lighter yellowish tone to it whenever I see it in fragrances, so I can kind of pick out the different fragrances from just the color. And then finally, the third fragrance and the Art and Olfaction 2023 finalist, it's Souls on Fire, this one right here. As you can see, this is the one I've worn the most. It's my favorite of the three fragrances. Absolutely love it. It does have a bit of a vintage vibe. Again, I think the first and the second do, but I think the most out of the three is this one right here that has the most vintage vibe. I would call this an amber floral fragrance. It has ambery touches for sure, and also lots of floral touches. And this one definitely has some musky funkiness as well, which I quite like. It's a nice balance of it. It's not overly musky. It's not overly animalic. It's just a right balance with all the other notes together. So wearing it is an extreme pleasure for me because I like the combination of the notes in this one. So it has notes of osmanthus, Egyptian jasmine, civet, tobacco, basil, pink pepper, labdanum. These are the notes that are credited for this one. And in the end, it reminds me of a chypre floral as well. I call it an amber floral. There are some chypre-like touches. Most importantly, it reminds me of fragrances like Salome from the House of Papillon Perfumery, another British house, or even the fragrance Bal Versailles with the House of Jean Desprez. But for me, it's much different than the Bal Versailles, more closer to the Salome. But in the end, it's also not as animalic as Salome or Jean Desprez's Bal Versailles. To me, this is very, very wearable with that light funk in there that's coming in to kind of give you a little bit of excitement rather than going fully animalic in your face or in your wearing experience and then making it a challenge. At least for me, I can totally wear this one and really enjoy it, and really the kind of fragrance I really enjoy from indie niche houses. Again, the fragrances are definitely from an indie perfumer, so you can totally experience. There's a little bit of a rough around the edges experience, but I kind of like that with these fragrances, and I enjoy supporting the indie niche perfumery houses. And once I met Simon and decided to check out the fragrances, and the fact that I saw him again at the Art and Olfaction Awards and really started enjoying Souls on Fire, I wanted to do a video on the house, especially also since the bottles used to be different. And when I saw this bottle at Art and Olfaction Awards, I thought, wow, this bottle is so beautiful. To me, it takes me back to the 20s when, you know, that whole era of the Art Deco with not only architecture, but decorations and houses and things like that. I'm totally excited about, and this one totally takes me back to that era, especially also with the fact that Souls on Fire is a bit vintage smelling. Totally paints a picture of that era to me. Either way, Souls on Fire is my favorite of the three fragrances. I really like this one quite a bit, and want to kind of support this house and also let you guys all know about what a great house this is from an indie perfumer that is just starting out with three fragrances. So either way, last thoughts on Souls on Fire. Check that one up. I hope you guys get to try it. But if you know this house, do let me know. Put a comment down below so I can find out. I'd like to find out if any of you has experienced this house, knows about them, has worn them. Maybe perhaps you're in the UK, you have easier access to these fragrances, because I don't think they're selling here in the States yet. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think they're selling here, so hopefully they will soon. But either way, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.